Today we're taking a look at the Yottamaster Y7000 Pro NVMe PCIexpress solid-state drive. Thanks to Yottamaster for sending this one over for us to take a look at. The Y7000 Pro SSD is a solid performing NVMe PCIexpress 4.0 drive for gamers and high-end PC builders. You could even use this with your PS5. The Y7000 includes an M.2 screw, a screwdriver, and some thermal pads, as well as a small heatsink, which is a really nice add-on in my opinion. If you bought a motherboard that doesn't have a heatsink, or you just don't have one of those really tiny M.2 screwdrivers, you're going to end up saving some money and time since this is all included. The Y7000 drive is based on QLC NAND, but it does feature SLC cache, which combined with the controller and the firmware really helps to speed up the read and write speeds, as well as giving this drive some really solid endurance, especially for QLC. In terms of the rated read and write performance, Yottamaster has the Y7000 Pro rated at 7,000 megabytes per second sequential read speeds and about 6,500 megabytes per second sequential write speeds. Again, that's quite good for a modern QLC drive. With this level of performance, this drive should perform very well in a gaming PC or a PS5, for example. In my opinion, the specs versus the cost for this drive, I think it's a strong performer and a solid value if you're looking for performance without breaking the bank. Of course, I did have to test this drive with CrystalDiskMark 8 in order to get an idea of the real-world read and write performance. For my testing scenario, I installed Windows 11 directly on this solid-state drive, and then I ran CrystalDiskMark off of that installation. I ran 3 total test scenarios. The first one being a relatively empty or stock install for Windows 11. Then I reran the testing at 53% storage utilization, and then finally I ran it again at just over 80% storage utilization. I really wanted to get an idea of the performance after you've kind of settled in and you have all your games, your programs, all the stuff you normally put on your PC. I wanted to see if that impacted the read and write performance. For the relatively empty drive test, I saw about 7,200 megabytes per second in terms of sequential read speed and about 6,000 megabytes per second for sequential write speed. Again, I think that's pretty solid for a QLC drive, especially when it's hosting the operating system that the testing is being performed on. When I reran this for the 53% storage utilization benchmark, the solid-state drive achieved, again, 7,200 megabytes per second in terms of sequential read speed, and just a touch under 5,900 megabytes per second for the sequential write speed. Still pretty solid in my opinion. And then we have the last test, the 80% storage utilization test. Again, I actually still saw 7,200 megabytes per second in terms of sequential read speeds, and still averaged around 5,900 megabytes per second for sequential write speeds. This is really some solid performance, even as the drive began filling up and hit 80%. In my opinion, this is a super important benchmark to run because you don't want your PC or your PS5 or whatever device you're installing this into to just slow down and perform worse as the drive fills up. So I'm really glad that the drive performed well in all of the tests, especially the last one. At the time that I made this video, the drive was going for about $70 MSRP on Amazon, and I have actually seen some sales for the drive dip down into the 60s or just at $60. In my opinion, at the MSRP or the sale price, whichever it happens to be, this is a pretty good value SSD, especially when you consider that we're getting an endurance rating of 600 terabytes written. That's really good for a QLC drive, and that's going to far outlast any typical gaming PC, or honestly, even most workstations. So if you're looking for a fast drive and you're on somewhat of a budget, I would definitely recommend the Yottamaster Y7000 Pro for your build. If you're interested in learning more about this SSD or picking one up for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description below. You can head down there and check that out. If you got anything out of this video, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video, as that'll tell YouTube to share this with other people who are researching budget but still fast NVMe solid-state drives. If you want to see more component testing, PC builds and home lab builds, and the occasional GPU benchmark video, get subscribed to the channel and ring that bell for notifications. Until next time, keep on gaming.